This is Small Secrets, Big Rewards, ATC tip number 5. This one's a little bit longer, so I'm going to try and break it down into 2 parts. I'd like to keep these around 5 minutes each. Chapter 5, or tip number 5, Health Matters. Let your food be your medicine, and your medicine be your food. Hippocrates. Be your own healthcare advocate. Your body is your temple, your palace, your vehicle, whichever fits your concept of it. Know that you and only you are responsible for gaining and maintaining your health. Many can aid you in this quest for health, but only you can perform the acts necessary. When I was a young girl, I can easily recall having conversations with various family members about diseases and cures. Usually these conversations took place around the time I was due for school-required vaccinations, and though there was a negative experience behind my assertion that I didn't need vaccines, there was a deeper belief at the center of my so-called argument. The belief I'm talking about was a single, simple gut instinct that whatever disease nature created or allowed to exist, nature could cure too. The negative experience I'm about to share will probably be considered almost comedic by some. But consider both the mindset of a middle-aged doctor as well as the mindset of a 7-year-old female in the 1970s. At 7 years old, a normal child is self-aware. Within the realm of their experiences so far, they know what they like and what they don't. By 7 years old, the odds are a child has learned at least some of the basics of etiquette, proper behavior, and modesty. Also by 7 years old, many children have at least a rudimentary understanding of what respect is, both for self and for others. Taking the above statements into consideration, and the fact that pediatricians are doctors who specialize in children, consider the following true story, then consider how you would feel if it had been your experience or your child's. In the mid-1970s, I was brought to the doctor for a booster shot before starting the school year. It wasn't the shot I had a problem with. It was the fact that I had to pull my pants down in front of somebody else to receive it. At this stage, I was already subject to teasing from both family and peers about being chubby, and as a result of that, I became extremely modest, especially when the situation was out of my control. So, sitting in the doctor's office with my mom, I decided that the shot would be administered in my arm rather than butt. So when the doctor called my name, I stood tall and confident and told him where he could stick the needle. His reply was something along the lines of, "That's not how it works. This one goes in your tush." To which I, as a precocious child, replied, "Then I just won't get it," or some such thing. At this point, the doctor simply pulled my pants down and gave me the shot in the rump. We were still in the waiting room. It was a moment of humiliation that 40 years later I still recall with obscene clarity, all in the name of a booster shot. My personal sovereignty was violated, and I was literally stripped bare-bottomed in front of the world. Now, all things being equal, there are many children who regularly suffer much more horrifying indignities than this could ever be seen as. But given this tiny little indignity, I cried as if I'd been beaten, and my mother never brought me back to that doctor, just so you know. All it takes is a little imagination to develop sympathy and empathy for all those kids out there who are regularly victimized by people who are supposed to protect them. There are a few points to the above story. The first being that the doctor didn't even try to explain that it was more effective or efficient to give a booster shot in the butt. Maybe he thought I was too young to understand, but the odds are that he, being a white male in his 60s at the time, was probably not keen on the idea of being questioned by a 7-year-old female. Some may see that as a grand assumption on my part, but if you didn't live through the 70s and experience the mindsets and mentalities of those who came of age before then, you can't really understand what I'm saying. In the 70s, doctors were still considered by many to be about as close to gods as humans could get without being some kind of clergyman. After all, doctors knew about the body, how it worked, and they had a reputation for saving lives. Dr. Kildare, Ben Casey, Marcus Welby, MD, they're just a few of the examples of the doctors as near God in popular culture. MASH, the show about a surgical team in war-torn Korea, was a groundbreaker, not just because it tackled so many pertinent issues from women's rights to bigotry to addiction, But because, in spite of the fact that these medical professionals frequently performed surgical miracles, they were written and portrayed as simply deeply flawed human beings, just trying to do the best they could to help others while living in impossible circumstances. What's the point of all this? Doctors are just people. They're trained in the workings of the human body and how to fix things that go wrong, especially when it comes to trauma. Most of them are excellent when it comes to handling the mechanics of traumatic effect. What more than 95% of medical doctors are not good at is prevention, maintenance, and relating to their patients. A hugely disproportionate amount of class time for a doctor is spent on biochemistry, honestly so they can learn more accurately how and what to prescribe to their patients to keep them and their conditions managed. Check out who subsidizes medical schools and where the grants come from. The pharmaceutical industry is a multi-billion-dollar per week business. Chemotherapeutic agents alone in America are estimated to earn pharmaceutical companies upwards of $4 billion per week. This is an obscenely conservative estimate. The fact is, pharmaceutical companies don't want people cured, they want people and their conditions managed. They want sick people kept alive and their conditions controlled enough so that they can continue working. If they're able to continue working, they can continue paying for their meds. Then, as the meds become less effective at controlling the condition and symptoms return or grow worse, more meds are introduced with a whole slew of possible side effects that need to be managed by more drugs made by the same pharmaceutical companies. It's a controlled spiral descent that leads people in their 60s, 70s, and 80s, often living on fixed incomes. When was the last time you heard of a senior citizen or retiree that was actually enjoying their retirement and the fruits of their lifelong labors, rather than fighting to stave off the effects of chronic conditions? Frequently requiring multiple medications at multiple times a day to manage symptoms rather than cure the diseases that they have. Historically speaking, in America, there have been at least a dozen researchers, doctors, and biochemists that have developed cures for everything from diabetes to heart disease to almost every kind of cancer. The powers that be here in America have done everything they can, from harassment to manufacturing and disseminating false information, to discredit them and chase them out of our country. After all, there's approximately $4 billion a week at stake. So when it comes down to anyone who suggests that a better, healthier life can be yours for the taking simply by treating your personal organism as a whole and feeding it the appropriate fuel instead of genetically modified and hyper-processed foods laden with sugar and high fructose corn syrup, they're ridiculed, called hippies or crackpots, and most certainly blacklisted among medical and pharmaceutical establishments. Again, taking all of the above into consideration, there are times when medicines are wholly appropriate and necessary. But you don't take antibiotics for a cold, and any doctor that prescribes them to you for one isn't holding up their end of the Hippocratic Oath. A cold is caused by a virus. Antibiotics are effective against bacterial agents, not viruses. One last word on doctors. Most of them get into medicine because they are driven for some reason to help. Yes, it's lucrative once they pay off the couple of $100,000 in debt, but for the most part, doctors and medical practitioners do deserve the same respect that every other living creature deserves. So with regards to your health, if you are interested in keeping it, you have to bear the responsibility for regaining and maintaining it. This is just part of my personal journey as well. We've grown accustomed to the idea that a cure is a one-time thing, a pill, an IV, a shot, and that once the cure is administered, we can go back to the habits that created the situation in the first place. Nothing could be farther from the truth. The cure is nothing more difficult or simple than restructuring the habits that created the situation in the first place. Taking care of your body with healthy fuel can and will change your life, your health, your mental clarity, your longevity, well, every aspect, from your energy levels to your sexual prowess, which will skyrocket. And instead of feeling bogged down and bloaty in the belly, your steps will be filled with vigor. A vigor you probably haven't had since your teen years. Next, we'll build a foundation for your new life. Thank you for listening. This has been Small Secrets, Big Rewards, ATC, step number 5, part 1. The rest of this will come next time. Thank you very much. If you like what you've heard, if you agree, if you disagree, please comment. If you've had your own experiences, please comment. Please like and subscribe, and do share also for all your loved ones or even liked ones. And hope to see you soon. Until then, keep hoping.